We have Kentucky Senator Rand Paul set to formally launch his 2016 presidential campaign. He's slated to announce at a rally in Louisville, Kentucky tomorrow. That's before he makes stops in crucial early primary states as part of a launch tour. So joining us with more on all of this is CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto. Thanks for being here.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So we have Rand Paul out there trying to, galvanize the GOP conservatives, the right-leaning members of his party, but he's sort of straying away a little bit from his libertarian roots. Is that what we're seeing?
I think it's really interesting. You look at Rand Paul's numbers overall, and what we should all be looking at right now is how many people would consider voting for any of these candidates. The polls that have horse races straight up, one against another, that's not where voters are right now. So Rand Paul's numbers of people who would consider him are pretty good. He's among the top tier. He's got about 39% of people who would say they'd consider voting for him. That's up there around where Marco Rubio is. It's a little less than people with more name recognition like Jeb Bush or Mike Huckabee. But to your point, that's exactly right. It's where do they go from here? What kind of groups did they go after? Rand Paul definitely started as the Tea Party candidate, right? And he does pretty well, our polls find, among Tea Party voters. But can he expand that? Can he go into, say, younger voters? I think that's a big question, and so far, I think he can. It looks like a little bit early indication that he can.
Now, the question is, does he alienate the energetic base that was so supportive of his father when he tries to go a little bit more mainstream?
Right. The lesson out of 2012 for a lot of Republicans is don't go so far right in the primaries that you can't come back to the middle, for lack of a better word, in the general. And it seems like a lot of these candidates, including from what we see in Rand Paul's video, that they're trying to have a little bit of a general election message there, reaching out to different constituencies. In his video, he talks about how he went to urban areas, places Republicans don't normally go, trying to look for different constituencies there so that when they get to the general, they're not maybe too far to the right. And also, maybe Republican voters look at them and say, that's somebody that can win in the general and has a little bit more of a broad appeal.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how he differentiates himself from Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz if he's not the libertarian candidate per se. But we also have to ask you about Hillary Clinton. Speaking of this race, we can't ignore the Democrats. What's the latest with her race?
Well, she's opened up a headquarters, we all know, over in Brooklyn. And what'll be interesting here is if she doesn't get a lot of competition on the Democratic side, and right now it looks like she's got the field mostly to herself, not quite. Martin O'Malley may have something to say about that, a couple of other candidates. But she's definitely the prohibitive favorite, at least in the eyes of voters. Do the Republicans run as much against her as they do against each other? That'll be a key dynamic to watch, because if she doesn't have a lot of competition, they could take up most of the attention, and that could be an interesting thing once the fall campaign heats up come next year.
And Jeb Bush, of course, is the presumed frontrunner for the Republicans. What do we make of this whole thing where he checked Hispanic on the ballot? Is it an honest mistake? I mean,
his tweets definitely make it out as such. They sort of made light of it. I thought they just went back and forth and said, yes, it's an honest mistake. But it does. What we do want to talk about, though, is reaching out to different constituencies, like we mentioned. Certainly Jeb Bush has made it clear that he is going to try to reach out to a larger number of Hispanics. And maybe that works in the Republican primaries, but really more, again, this is thinking about the general. It's thinking about, do Republicans want to nominate somebody who can have that potential outreach? Because 7 in 10 Hispanics voted for the Democrat, President Obama, last time. And just on the straight numbers, Republicans have a very hard time in the Electoral College if they don't start to cut into that.